Coming up on today's episode. Alright, back with you again on another update on the Ranger 8-track FM stereo unit that you see in front of you. You may see a couple of wires coming out the back. The red is the power wire, and the gray one is either the left or right speaker wire, and I don't know which it is. I really don't. I'm looking at my collection of wire and, trying to find that in my current collection of junk. Is almost impossible, but again, I'm trying my best to get it. And I have some brown wire, and that's what is on here. And I kind of want to use the original colors if I could. Of course, a black wire for ground, that's in there. It's in there too far to get to connect another piece like I did with these. But again, I will hook it up either. It's connected to the ground here, so I might just put a ring around it here and use that for the ground. It's not a big deal one way or the other. Or even just, put one up here on one of these, covers or something like that. As long as it's on the chassis ground, that's all we have to have. So, let me turn it around here and let's look at the front real quick. I did also find actually two more screws. That's the original one there. And I've got two more screws in a unit where this is now mounted properly. That's the mono stereo switch that I will cut off once the schematic gets here. Now, I didn't mention that, but the schematic is out for delivery today. Mail usually runs around 2 to 3, somewhere in there, so I haven't seen it yet, but when it comes in, I will grab it, and we'll have probably added to this, at least a blow-up of that, and we'll have that or add that to our little collection of items that we're doing here. So anyway, there's the FM switch. That's the selector switch for the 8-track. Change channels. I got it polished up a little bit. It didn't turn out too bad, but it's not the greatest in the world. So that's that. The front looks pretty good. Now, I think I may have pointed this out already, but there's the FM switch itself. When you can see when I plug it in or push it in, it clicks and locks in place. That is on there, and this is off. So, but there is a double pole, double throw switch down here, just much like the one on the tape player up here. And there are two red wires connected to the middle terminal. And just one of them, I think. I believe it only uses one set of the double pole, but don't quote me on that as far as they say. So, anyway, I did trace the reds back. You can see them right there, red ones. I think the other one is either purple or brown. I can't remember which. But the red ones go directly to this power wire here on the back and are connected. And not really sure how the whole thing is wired up. Again, the schematic will help with that. The other thing I want to show you that I got done last night, I looked through my bag of belts that I had bought for another project, and sure enough, I found a belt to fit it. And it now works perfectly as far as being tight and turning everything like it's supposed to be. I can turn this and it turns that. I did also clean I haven't lubricated it yet, but I did clean the shaft from the capstan in there and clean it all out. I put some lube down into it yet, but other than that, it is done. I did put some super lube. There's a fiber type I won't call it a washer, but a piece of fiber board, I guess is what you would call it. It's the bottom of this, and then there's a pointed, the end of the shaft is kind of pointed, but it's a rounded point, and that rests on that fiberboard. So I put some super lube on that, and that should keep that going, turning just like it's supposed to be. And so that's good. And again, that's, the things I have done so far to this. And again, some of this stuff was stuff that really didn't need to be for the power-up, but at the same time, I thought, well, why not? While I'm waiting for things to get here, might as well do that. So what I'm going to do as far as powering this up, and I'm not sure when I'm going to do that, but I wanted to do it today, but I had a BDST to mail and some other things to do business-wise, so decided to put that off. And I may make this over a 2-day period because I kind of like to have the power up and the schematic shown on this to show that we are making some progress. Really, this little bit that we've done is not much. So here's the other speaker wire. You can see there, I basically, the gray one was just like this one, and I added a piece of the longer wire to it and then brought it out the back with the rest of them. Obviously you saw the grommet I put in, a rubber grommet, and that will keep any chafing done from the wiring. Lighting situation, there's your white ones there together. They're not actually supposed to go together, but they're just sitting there. Okay, there's the other one. And here's the 2 red ones. I've got them taped up because they are power, I think, wires, more so than the white ones would be anyway. But anyway, I've been looking online for bulbs, and I don't really know what the multiplex signal voltage is. I'm hoping that I can figure that out from the schematic on what to replace them with. I found several that work for the 12 volt in here to do the lighting as far as the dial light and the track light and things like that. And I also want to, when I take this back off to do the bulbs, I want to paint the track indicator a bright orange. It's faded right now. It's more white than orange, but it's supposed to be orange, so we'll do that. The brown wire and the gray wire here, they come from the tape head. So I did follow those out, and I believe that's where oh, okay, I could be wrong about that. They go right here. One of them goes right here, and I believe that's the brown one right there. So yeah, okay, it is. That's from the, actually that's from the radio. No, yeah, that would be right. That would be the output of the preamp going into the input of the amplifier, because this I know is the output of the amplifier. These outputs go to it, and there's 2 output transformers right on this other side of this shield, and so that is going to be your output in, and this will be your input. Now I don't have, I'd like to have confirmation that the radio itself up here, and you guys are not looking at what I'm looking at. What's wrong with y'all? Radio up here also goes in there. So this is our RF end because it is shielded, and this would be your IF section here, obviously with the IF cans. So your output is going to be on this end, and that means there's got to be wires running from here back to the input end of the amplifier. So I haven't traced that out yet, but I'm sure that's the way it's going to be. Now Bob seems to think that the radio possibly could use the preamp, but I don't think so. Again, I don't know for sure. I'm just using my own speculative powers at the moment, and so that's that. Like I said, as I've said too many times already, the schematic will tell the tale. But anyway, those are the things that I found out. Again, this is the FM, or the mono stereo switch, and I traced it down all the way to this end. And again, there is basically these 2 wires go together through a capacitor when the switch is set to connect the 2 wires together. And so I'm guessing that's, they're using that as a mono stereo switch. But again, with this being the input side, I don't know why it would be down here at the output side. But again, maybe the output side is, when you just, again, it's going through a capacitor, so maybe that's enough isolation for it. I don't know. But anyway, that's where it goes to. And, so it's obviously not the radio. It's the tape that it switches from mono to stereo. So, all right, that's enough speculation on my part. Gonna wait for the rest of this to come in, and hopefully I can find a piece of brown wire. I may just strip that off and run it over to the speakers and just go from there instead of trying to just for the power up. I think I'm going to use my 970 BK 970 and put it here in the middle in front of the MFP, and maybe go that route. I don't know, but that's the thought on my part. So, anywho, that's what we're looking at here as far as that goes. And like I say, I'm going to shut it off here, and we'll come back later with a look at the schematic. Good day, YouTube. Here with you at the computer. And I have managed to scan in the schematic after getting the AR-74 Sam's book in the mail the other day. As you can see on the screen, this is the first page. This is starting at the FM antenna input, and there we can clearly see on the left there, bring my cursor over here so you can see this area here. FM antenna here comes into the radio here. This also is a coil. You can see the coil on the bottom of the radio. I pointed it out before, I believe. That's your extension cable, or whatever you want to call it, that goes back up to your AM radio. So that's what that is. Basically, just like any other radio, it comes into the front end here. We go into an RF amp first. The next stage is clearly the mixer, as you can see. There it is mixed into or with a oscillator signal, which brings the output frequency to 10.7 megahertz. And I think you can see here, these are filters, I'm sure, for that. A9, A8, and so it goes on there from there. I believe this is the oscillator. Yeah, this is the oscillator section down here. And so there's you go. Let's go to the second page now. As we can see, this is our output for that, and that's where we're going to come into. And here is our input from that output. And we go into the first IF amp right there, and on over second IF, third IF, and at this point in time, the section or the output folds back on itself and comes back over here to the fourth IF. And now these are all FM, obviously, and it goes through the ratio detector here and comes out here, like where it says D here, and goes back, and again that goes back to that point where we were talking about before, this section here down below the oscillator. Yeah, this is where it comes into that, comes into the multiplex amp, and it goes out as in two sides to it. You'll have stereo that way. And if we go back to the other section and we go down, we'll see where it comes in right there. And like I said, this is our stereo sections for the radio, and this is all done in this multiplex detector and stuff like that. And so when you come out on this side, as you'll see very clearly here, you do have a right and left channel, and they go through a preamp on the radio board that, like I said, is used for the amplification of the signal, audio signal now, and it goes over to the next page. Now, if we look at the next page after we've gotten the radio this far, this is going to be, I believe, our tape section. And we'll see, yes it is. This is our tape, our right and left tape heads here, come in here. This is from the radio. This is the stereo input from the radio right here. And it goes over and feeds into basically the preamp, which comes right after the heads. Bob was right on that. It does feed, the radio does feed into the preamp board. So that's where we're going to eventually, I'm going to show you that, but that's where we'll eventually get our input into. Not much else. There's just the left and right channels for the audio right there, Down this is power supply here. Now this is kind of important also because this is our switching for the radio and tape player. Here's our input for 12 volts right here. Comes through a 2 amp fuse, and we have a I thought this was a capacitor because it's 620, I think, picofarad, but Bob called it a spark plate, which is what it says, spark plate. And it also has a choke here. These are to lessen the noises from the older cars. Now, I don't know how much the newer cars need them, but I do know the old ones had a coil, which also would put out a decent noise frequency on RF. And it also has the alternator, or I don't know, in this case the Buick has a generator, but I don't know if it has a noisy generator or what. But anyway, these two items here combine to reduce the noise from the battery coming in, and so that's what they're for. Now, if we look at this, again, we can see this is the radio switch up here. This is the push button switch on the front faceplate. And basically you have two positions there. It is a double pole, double throw switch, but one side of it's not being used at all. Now, as you can see, coming in here, we have two wires actually, and they are two wires connected to that point right there, two red wires. One runs over to the other switch, which is the tape player switch, and we'll talk about that in a second. But just for the radio, if this is switched on, the circuit or the power goes on through here, comes down through here, because normally on the tape switch, with no tape present, it will be in radio position. That's just its natural position. Then it goes over to this line here, and we'll check that out in just a second when we get to the next page. Also, it's tied in with the second half of the double pole, double throw switch that is the tape player switch, and you can see it is it is also in radio mode. Now, as we will see very shortly, this particular feed line here is for the amplifier, and this one is for the radio. Because if you look carefully, the switch, when it is switched to tape, which is the lower section here, this one comes down here and still goes directly into the amplifier just like the radio does, okay? But now this also comes down here, and instead of going to the radio, it goes to the tape, and it goes to the motor, which is right here. So basically, this is the motor, the solenoid for changing the head position, and things of that sort that only pertain to the tape player itself. I believe that's the dial, the program indicator light right here, dial light, what do you want to call that? That's down here. So that doesn't even come on until the tape is inserted. So that's kind of neat like that. But anyway, this is all stuff that's pertaining. Now this, over here by itself, this is the little anti-theft switch that's on the case itself. The terminals here are meant to go to the horn relay, it says. Now, most cars have a ground horn switch. When you press your horn, it grounds the switch and goes over and energizes the relay. Now, obviously, you'd have to set this up the same way for it to just basically blow the horn. So you basically ground one side and make the other side go to the where the horn comes in. So that would work, but again, I thought it was kind of primitive. Bob thought it was simple, but whatever. That's the way that works, and we're not obviously going to incorporate that into our design. So anyway, now as you've seen that, let's go over the look of the last one real quick, and we'll see where these two lines here come in, and also where the amplifier section comes in. So if we look up here at the amplifier section first, here's one channel of the amplifier coming in here, and it goes through AF amp, driver, and the output, the pair of output TO3 output transistors right there. And here's our speaker, so that's one channel. Obviously goes through the volume control, all that stuff, and the balance control is right here, and here is your other volume control, your other channel, And again, it goes through the same exact situation here, out the speaker here. So there are your 2 channels for your audio. Now that leaves us the power supply. The power supply is, again, comes into, as we saw, there are 2 lines coming in. This is the, as I identified earlier, this is for the amplifier and this is for the radio. Now those are the only 2 that we're concerned with over on this side. The switch itself switches the motor in over there, but the rest of this is done for the radio itself. And again, I'll go back and show you what I was talking about. There's our lines again, radio coming out here, radio coming out here, but this is actually the amplifier line here. So coming back over here again, amplifier, radio. So that's just the way that's going to work. So all these sources down from 6 to 9 are powering the radio itself, and 1 through 5 powers the amplifier and any other functions, I guess, that's on the radio. But again, here's your dial light. You'll notice that it doesn't come on until the radio is powered up, and we're not going to be using it for our Bluetooth, so that won't be coming on, as you'll see in here in just a second. So basically, that's the way that's going to work, and I think that's a good enough explanation of how the schematic is laid out and how it works. And I think we're going to switch off now to my wiring modifications that I have planned for this, and let's take a look at those real quick. Okay, we are back once more. Now, from the, not the preamp, but the, you remember where the heads were on the other one, the diagram we were showing with the 2 channels and the heads. This is where I am planning to put the this is from the radio, the multiplex, the stereo radio, each channel of that. And this is where I plan to put the RCA jacks. As you can see, I've got them wired in here. And they will basically, because this will not be active, none of this will be active in the radio. And our feed from the Bluetooth dongle will come in here and basically just go into the preamp here, and just like it was a tape, but obviously we're not using it as a tape. So I'm hoping this will work. It may be overdriving it, putting it in at this level, but this is where the radio comes in. So I don't know exactly how it is wired in, but as you can see, there is a 100 and let's see, I can't tell what that is. 180K it looks like resistor here, so that's going to drop our voltage, our input voltage, from that just a little bit, and that may let it work just fine. So I don't know for sure, but this is where we're going to attempt to put our input into. All right, now what you can see, I've got it up here on the what do you call it? This is how I plan to alter the inputs a little bit. You may recall from the actual PDF of this, the schematic, there was a line that went from here to here. I have taken that line out in our wiring diagram here and put it over here to here. In other words, when the Bluetooth is off, these 2 will connect and make that same as it was before, basically. So also on this side, when the Bluetooth is off, the power comes in and goes nowhere, which we don't need it because it's going up here like it should and through the radio and the tape switch. So, but when it is on, all this is meaningless then, because we have basically taken and empowered just the amplifier. Remember, this was just the amplifier, this was the radio line. So in order to do that, we have to take this jumper out of here, because if it was, the radio would come on then as soon as we powered this up. So this is what the reason for the double pole, double switch, or double throw switch in there. And that should make it work just fine, and Bob agrees with that, so I'm always happy when Bob agrees with things I do. So anyway, like I said, this is how I plan to add the power requirements switch. What do you want to call it? I had originally thought about just running it from the input, but I thought, it would be nice to have the choke for the suppressor, or whatever they call this system, for the generator and coil noise, because this is an old car it's going into. It's not something modern. It still has the old coil of points ignition and the generator, as I stated. So just in case, we'll leave that in line, and I think this is the best course of action. Take our power off here, goes directly into the amplifier, and nowhere else. That's all we want, is the amplifier powered up. Now I am hoping that, well, I shouldn't say I hope, we're pretty darn sure that this only does the radio. I don't even think it does any of the preamp at all. I hope that's the only difference there, and we're going to make sure, because I'll look at the schematics to make sure that none of the sources for the amplifier appear in the power or in the preamp section, because that would throw our things off a lot if it did. So Bob seemed to think that's the way it was, amplifier and radio. So again, I will double check all that, make sure, but this should work to provide our power to the Bluetooth. Basically, again, when the Bluetooth is switched off, the radio goes exactly back like it was stock. There's no difference. There's nothing changed from the original wiring on the radio, and it will be wired just as it was from the factory. According to the wiring, it's obviously got a switch going to be wired in here, but that really won't have any play on it when it's off. It's just like it's not present. So, like I said, that's my solution to this problem, and I think it will be a good one. Again, this only powers up this. When you can see with it on, it goes nowhere here because it's just there's nothing there on top. And that's the only time we want it to make a connection there, is when it's off. So, again, I hate to keep harping on that, but I want to make sure that it was understood, and that it does make sense to everybody, So that's that. Like I say, that I want to basically try a power up on this if possible. I would basically like to see if the radio does work as is, and if it does, then we can proceed. We can know that the amplifier section works as it should, and I've got some test tapes there. I could stick a tape in it too if I want, and see how well again, we have changed the belt on the tape player, so that much of it should work, and we can see if the selector works, things of that sort. And that would be the next item that is coming up on this, I do believe. So stay with me and we'll see that.